For the first time, the 1921 census of England and Wales has been revealed. These records detail the lives of 38 million people from 100 years ago, offering a glimpse into post-World War I Britain. They reveal the lives of war veterans, working women and well-known figures including Alan Turing and J.R.R. Tolkien. And the historian Professor David Olusoga explains why this census is so exciting.
Well, it's partly exciting because it is 100 years. I mean, this day has been 100 years in the making. But the 1921 census is special for two reasons. The first is that there's not going to be another census released until 2052, and that's because the 1931 census was sadly destroyed by fire, and there wasn't a census in 1941 because of the Second World War. But the other reason I think it's special is because 1921 is a moment of huge change and trauma and disruption in Britain. And I think what's really powerful is we can see our own ancestors and how those incredible and difficult times impacted upon them.
And joining me now is 1921 census expert, the head of content publishing operations at the online genealogy service Findmypast, and that's Mary McKee. Mary, good to have you with us. So give us your take on the picture that this paints of life in 1921.
We are incredibly excited at Findmypast to be able to bring the census to life and that everybody around the world can now search it. And what we're seeing from the census is a world after the First World War, a world after a world pandemic. And what we can see is the impact of war on the population numbers. But we can also see that change in society that David mentioned. We see more women in professional roles. We see a change in society with the beginning of council houses. We have the census returns for the first council house, which is incredible to see. So I think it's an amazing time capsule that's opened. But at the same time, you can also understand what your family was doing at that time and how they connect to this broader historical narrative.
I'm really interested because you reference the aftermath of the Spanish flu, that huge pandemic that, of course, we've been talking about over the last couple of years as we look at this current pandemic. And what can we learn from this census about how people recovered, how people rebuilt their lives following the Spanish flu?
I think what the 1921 census can show us is that people are resilient. England and Wales are resilient countries, and they were able to survive this trauma in the same way that we are surviving through the world pandemic at the moment.
And how can people actually view this then? You've mentioned that it is open now to the public right around the world. So what do people need to do to take a look?
Sure, everybody can go to findmypast.co.uk and search the 1921 census. You can search by a name, maybe your ancestor's name, or even search for an address and find out your house history.
Okay. Oh, so you can look for an address and perhaps see who lived there then, find out a little bit more about what was happening in your neighborhood at that time.
Absolutely. The census gives us the opportunity to reconstruct communities and also look at the early generations that are living in your house. If you don't have an ancestor that was living in 1921 England and Wales like myself, I can look at the history of my house instead and understand why the kitchen was laid out the way it was, because there was a chef there at one point.
Are there any extraordinary stories that have jumped out for you in what you've seen so far from this census, Mary?
There's so much that you can find in the 1921 census. I think one of the most amazing finds that we had was the King's Return, the royal household in Windsor Castle, but also kept inside the same book that held the King's Return is the Crimphill Workhouse. And I think it just demonstrates that the census is a complete leveler. Everybody was enumerated, whether you're the pauper or the king. You can all complete your census form. We also have Arthur Conan Doyle. His census form shows that he had a medium in the house and a psychic, and it's very plausible that night, on census night, he was having a seance in the house.
Okay, that's a fascinating glimpse of what can be found in the census. Mary McKee, census expert, the 1921 census expert at Findmypast. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.